The slap echoed through the yard like a rifle shot. No bird stirred. No wind moved. Just that sharp crack splitting the silence and the whimper that followed. Emma staggered back, her cheek blazing red, arms trembling as she gripped the bucket. She dropped. Water spread across the dust like a shameful confession, vanishing almost as fast as her courage. "Clumsy little wretch," hissed Clara Stanton, black dress snapping in the wind, eyes colder than any frost the mountains could offer. She raised the switch again, wrist practiced, voice hard. "You spill another bucket and you'll wish I'd only used the cane." Emma didn't cry. Not anymore. She'd learned that lesson early. Tears only made the beatings last longer. She swallowed the lump in her throat, knelt to pick up the bucket and whispered, "Yes, ma'am." Across the fence line, hidden between the oak trees, Reed Maddox stood still as stone. He'd seen enough. It wasn't the first time he watched that girl flinch before a blow, or limp back to the house carrying burdens too big for her bones. But today something in her expression caught him. Was it shame? Resignation? Maybe something even deeper. The slow death of believing anyone might care. That night, he left a small basket by the split rail fence. Cornbread wrapped in a cloth, a tin of tea leaves, and a note that read only, "If you ever need a road that don't come back here, I know one." Emma found it at dawn while fetching eggs. Her fingers traced the rough handwriting like it was scripture. She looked toward the woods where the basket came from, but saw nothing but trees. Still, something inside her stirred. A whisper. A flicker. Something dangerously close to hope. But hope was expensive, and Emma couldn't afford it. That afternoon, Clara caught her reading behind the barn instead of weeding the south beds. The switch came down 3 times before Clara finally panted. From the effort, Emma didn't scream. She just stared ahead, as if somewhere deep inside her had stopped responding. The next day, she poured the tea Reed left, her hands trembling slightly as she held the warm mug near her bruised lips. She didn't know why she trusted it. Maybe because it tasted like calm. 2 days later, she found another basket. A boiled egg, 2 apples, a wool scarf. No note this time. Just silent witness. Then, on the 3rd night, Clara lost her temper worse than ever. A plate shattered. A hot pan thrown. Emma ducked, but not fast enough. The iron clipped her shoulder, sent her to the floor. She lay there, dazed, while Clara ranted above her. "You're nothin'. You hear me? Nothin'. I don't know why God left you here when your mama died, but he made a mistake." Emma didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't rise. Something inside her had finally cracked. She waited until the house creaked into silence, until the lamplight under Clara's door flickered out. Then she crept outside with only the scarf and a half loaf of bread. She didn't look back. She followed the road past the well, past the fence, into the trees. The moon hung low and silver, lighting the path like it knew her feet would come. Reed was there, sitting on the porch as if he'd known tonight would be the night. She stopped 3 paces from his steps. He didn't smile, didn't ask questions, just stood and opened the door. And for the first time in her 12 years, Emma Stanton walked into a home without fear. The floor creaked beneath her bare feet, but no one barked for her to stop. No fists, no switches, just a low hum of quiet, broken only by the ticking of a wall clock and the soft snap of firewood shifting in the stove. Reed Maddox moved slowly around the room, careful like a man trying not to startle a wild thing. He poured hot water into a tin cup, added honey, and slid it across the table toward her. Emma stared at it, then at him. He didn't speak, just nodded once, calm and steady. She took the cup in both hands and sipped. Her lips split, reopened from the warmth, but she didn't care. The tea tasted like oranges and safety. There was only one bed in the cabin. Reed laid a pile of blankets near the fire, handed her a folded shirt that smelled of pine and leather, and stepped outside to give her privacy. She didn't sleep much that first night. The silence was too thick. No shouted names, no angry doors, just wind tapping at the windows, and an occasional snort from the horses outside. At dawn, she dressed quietly and stood near the fire until Reed came back in with a bucket of fresh water. "You hungry?" She hesitated, then nodded. He made porridge. Just oats, milk, and a pinch of salt, but it filled her hollow belly in a way punishment never had. He let her eat all of it. Didn't take the bowl halfway. Didn't slap her hand when she spilled. Little. Later that morning she asked if she could help. Reed looked surprised, but nodded. Can you handle an axe? She flinched. Then realized he meant firewood. She shook her head. Then you'll learn. And she did that in the days that followed. Emma learned things she'd never known a child like her could know. How to scrub a cast-iron pan until it shone. How to pluck the weeds that didn't belong and leave the ones that did. How to brush a horse's coat so it gleamed like polished chestnut. She spoke little, and Reed didn't push her to fill the space. His presence was steady, like the trees. Outside, always there, always listening, never demanding. One night, while folding laundry, she asked the question that had sat heavy on her heart. Why me? He didn't pretend not to know what she meant. He just said, you were looking for a way out. And I had one. She nodded. That was enough, but not everything was peaceful. Some mornings she'd wake from dreams where Clara's voice still boomed down the hallway. Once she dropped a cup and scrambled to pick up the shards, heart racing as if punishment was already on its way. Reed didn't move. Just sat there at the table, sipping his coffee. Finally she looked up. He said nothing only. Met her eyes with that same quiet certainty. It took her a minute to realize. He wasn't waiting to punish her. He was waiting for her to understand she wasn't going to be punished at all. The next day. She laughed. It wasn't much, just a breathy noise at something the chickens did. But it stopped Reed in his tracks. Not from shock. Just a soft glance. Like he'd been waiting a long time to hear that sound. That night, he showed her how to saddle a horse. Her name's Maisie, he said. She don't like carrots, but she run like the wind if you let her. Emma's hands were unsteady, but Maisie nuzzled her wrist like it was no trouble at all. She rode for the first time that evening, just around the yard, clutching the horn like it was her lifeline. Wind tugged her hair loose, and she smiled into it, eyes bright with a joy she hadn't dared feel in years. At dinner, she asked if she could stay for good. Reed didn't smile, but he did something better. He passed her the salt and said, might need to build you a room then. And just like that, the cabin became hers too. Emma was learning to sleep through silence. No more snapping belts. No prayers barked like orders. No footsteps overhead that made her stomach twist. Just the sound of trees shifting in the wind and the warm creak of timber adjusting to nightfall. But peace, she would learn, always has its price. It came one morning in the form of hooves slow, deliberate crunching up the gravel path. Reed was chopping wood near the corral. He paused, axe still in midair, when the rider came into view. A tall man in a gray coat and black gloves. His horse dusted from a long ride. His mouth curled, his voice oily and smooth. Well now, if it ain't Reed Maddox. Reed wiped his hands on a rag. Cooper. Hank Cooper dismounted slow, his gaze drifting toward the porch, toward Emma, who stood just behind the screen door, her breath caught in her throat. Didn't expect to find you playin' daddy, Cooper drawled. Town's been wondering what you're hidin' out here. She ain't your business. She might be the law's, though. He handed Reed a folded paper official, stamped. A complaint filed by one Clara Stanton. She says you kidnapped her ward. Says she's willin' to forgive the mistake if the girls returned. Promptly, Reed's jaw flexed. He didn't read the paper. Just folded it again, handed it back. She's not going back, Cooper smirked. Ain't up to you? Hearing's been scheduled. You and the girl need to show in Millstone by week's end. Judge Harlan presiding. Reed didn't respond. Cooper leaned in close. Some folks remember what you did, Reed. What you were. Might be the girls got no choice in this, but I wouldn't put your own neck on the line. He swung up into the saddle. See you in court. When he was gone, Emma stepped outside, arms crossed tight around her chest. Who was he? Who was he? Trouble in a nice coat, Reed muttered. That night she didn't eat much. Her stomach was tight, thoughts spinning like storm clouds. What if they made her go back? What if they didn't believe her? What did Cooper mean? She asked softly. About what you did? Reed stirred the fire. I used to do things I ain't proud of, before I bought this land. Before I learned quiet was better than right. Emma didn't press. The look in his eyes told her he'd already said more than he wanted to. The next morning, the sheriff came. Sheriff Ames was a tired-looking man with kind eyes and too much weight behind his badge. He tipped his hat, sat down at the table, and explained things plainly. Legally, she was Clara's ward. No kin on record, no will from her mother. That gives Clara claim, unless the court finds her unfit. She is unfit, Emma said, voice shaking. She's evil. Then you'll need to say that to the judge, and he'll ask for proof. Reed asked one question. Will you stand with us? Ames hesitated, then nodded. I'll testify to what I've seen, and if that man Cooper causes trouble, I'll keep him on a leash. The days before the hearing passed like thunder pressing against the sky. Emma packed a small satchel. She practiced speaking in front of the mirror. She hit me. She starved me. She said God left me behind for a reason. Each time her voice cracked. Reed didn't push her. Just built a crate to carry her favorite books and promised, you won't have to face her alone. The morning they left, Maisie was saddled and the buckboard wagon packed. Emma climbed up beside Reed, boots swinging off the edge. He handed her the scarf she'd come with, now washed and mended. Still yours, he said. Emma clutched it, then looked down the road. I'm scared. I am too, Reed replied. But scared don't mean we stop. The wagon rumbled forward, wheels creaking under the weight of their shared hope. The road to Millstone stretched long ahead, and somewhere beyond it her past waited to be faced and finally defeated. The courthouse in Millstone stood like a sun-bleached monument to men with loud voices and longer shadows. Its columns cracked, its windows clouded, but it still carried the weight of judgment. Emma had never been inside a building so big. Her boots echoed on the wood floor as she walked in beside Reed, clutching her scarf like armor. The air smelled of ink, dust, and old fear. Clara Stanton was already there, dressed in black like always, face pinched in a mask of piety. Her hands were folded in her lap like she was waiting for church to start, but her eyes flicked up when Emma entered, and they burned with fury. Hank Cooper leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, mouth smirking like he already knew the outcome. The judge, a wiry man with silver hair and a tired face, called them forward. Hearing of Stanton versus Maddox regarding custody of minor Emma Stanton. Parties will speak in turn. Clara stood first, voice syrupy. Your Honor, I raised that girl since her mother passed. I provided food, shelter, discipline. She ran off without cause and has been kept by Mr. Maddox, an unmarried man with a violent past. Reed didn't flinch. She's confused, that's all, Clara continued. I'm here to forgive, to take her back and do what's right under the Lord. Emma's fists clenched. The judge turned to her. Emma, you're welcome to speak. She stood slowly. I didn't run, she said, voice small. I escaped? The courtroom went quiet. Emma reached up and unwrapped her scarf. Beneath it, bruises still colored her neck and shoulders, faint but visible. She held up her left arm. She hit me with a pan. Told me God left me behind for a reason. She starved me. Called me filth, Clara scoffed. That girl's always been dramatic. I still flinch when people raise their voice, Emma said, louder now. I still eat fast because I'm scared someone will take it. I still dream of being locked in the root cellar. She turned to the judge. I've only been with Mr. Maddox a few weeks, but I've never been safer. He doesn't shout. He doesn't grab. He lets me breathe. Her voice shook. That woman never loved me. She just liked having someone to hurt. For a long time, no one spoke. Then the judge nodded. Mr. Maddox, do you wish to speak? Reed stepped forward. I ain't perfect. I've done things I regret, but I didn't take Emma. I found her, and I gave her the first peace she's ever known. Hank stepped in, then, trying to muddy the waters. What about Reed's history? Ask him where he was 10 years ago. Ask him what the name Shiloh means to him. The judge looked up. Do you deny involvement in the Shiloh incident? No, Reed said. I was there. I was young. I was angry. And I've spent every day since trying to be a man who don't raise his fists unless there's no other way. Emma spoke again. He never raised a fist to me. Not once. He taught me how to ride a horse, how to make porridge, how to be still without being afraid. The judge leaned back, rubbing his chin. Then Sheriff Ames stood and added, I've seen the bruises, heard the screams from Clara's farm. I'd trust that girl's word over a saint's song. When the ruling came, Emma thought her knees might give. Custody of Emma Stanton shall remain with Mr. Maddox. The court finds the complainant unfit. This hearing is closed. Clara's mouth fell open, but she said nothing, just gathered her coat and walked out like a storm cloud. Cooper, slinking behind her. Emma stayed frozen. Reed placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle as rain. You did good, he said. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. Emma didn't cry, but her chest ached in a way that felt clean, like air in lungs long starved. On the wagon ride home, she held Reed's hand. Thank you, she whispered. No, he said. You saved yourself. I just left the door open. Summer stretched itself wide across the hills, and for the first time in her life, Emma felt the warmth on her skin without wondering when the cold would return. She had a room, now small, with whitewashed walls and a handmade quilt, but it was hers. Reed carved her name into the door with a steady hand. No one comes in here but you, he said. Every morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Maisie nickering for oats, and each night she fell asleep to the creak of the rocking chair in the living room and the rustle of pages. As Reed read his newspaper by lantern light, she planted her own section of the garden: carrots, sunflowers, a few wild strawberries. She learned to sew patches onto her own clothes and started making jam out of whatever grew near the edge of the woods. Reed let her be messy, let her learn. You ain't got to get everything right, he said one afternoon as she burned the biscuits and looked like she might cry. I don't want to mess up. He smiled softly. That's what learning's for. But peace never lasts untested. One morning, Reed stepped out to check the fence line and came back with something clenched in his hand. It was a feather, long, black, bound in red string. He laid it on the table. Emma's breath caught in her throat. That's what Clara used to hang on the root cellar door. Reed stared at it for a long moment. A threat, maybe, a message. But from who? She lost. Doesn't mean she's done. That night, they double-checked the locks, brought the chickens into the barn, and kept the lamp burning late. Emma didn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding in her chest. Fear was a familiar visitor, but this time it didn't settle into her bones the same way. Not with Reed in the other room. Not with her name carved into the door. The next day, she didn't retreat. She worked. She planted. She saddled Maisie and rode hard across the open field, just to feel the wind scream past her ears. When she returned, breathless and flushed, she found Reed by the fire chopping kindling. She stood next to him for a long time before speaking. Can I ask you something? Course. What if she comes back? Reed didn't stop chopping. Then we handle it. Same as before. Together. Emma nodded, staring into the flames. Can I call you something? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. He turned to her, eyes curious. Pa, she said. Reed didn't speak for a long moment. His jaw tightened, not from anger, but from something deeper. Something buried. He set down the axe. Yeah, he said, voice thick. I'd like that. From then on he was pay, and she said it often, especially when he wasn't expecting it. Double quotes, pay. Can you help me with the beans? Pa, where'd I put my boots? Pa, you forgot your hat again. Each time he'd glance at her with something, between surprise and pride, like the word healed something in him. When the mail came, it brought a letter from Ruth, a woman Reed once knew from Shiloh. A widow now, raising her niece, Anna, on the edge of nowhere. She wrote about trouble, about loneliness, about maybe needing a place to start over. Reed let Emma read it. When she finished, she looked up. Can they stay here? You sure? Emma nodded. This place made me whole. Maybe it can help them, too. Reed smiled, slow and quiet. Then we'll make room. And just like that, the home they were building, made of scars, healing, and choice, began to grow. The fire came just after midnight. It wasn't wild or accidental. Someone had soaked the barn's east wall in oil and struck a match. The blaze licked up the boards like a starving beast, hungry for the life they'd built. Reed got the horses out. Emma carried water till her arms screamed. The smoke choked the air and turned the stars above into smudged ghosts. By morning, the barn was half gone. Maisie limped from smoke inhalation. The hens were scattered. The feed was Ash. Sheriff Ames walked the blackened ruins, jaw tight. This wasn't random. Someone sent a message. Emma didn't have to guess who. The next day, they found a noose hanging from the porch beam. Rough rope, knotted fast, a feather tied to its end with red string. Reed took it down without a word. But Emma saw the tension in his shoulders, the flicker of something dark in his eyes. The townsfolk whispered but kept their distance. Clara's poison still lingered in Millstone, sweetened by her hymns and handshakes. Hank Cooper had fanned her. Story with old gossip and twisted truths. Reed was a loner. Emma a mystery. The fire made them a problem. Sheriff Ames could only shrug. No witnesses, no proof. Emma sat on the porch that evening, feet curled under her, eyes on the burned barn. She was tired of fear, tired of letting silence speak louder than truth. I want to say something, she told Reed. He looked up. To who? To all of them. The town held church every Sunday, and Clara never missed a pew. That Sunday, Emma walked through the chapel doors in a plain blue dress, her hair braided back, chin held high. The whispers started before she reached the front. Reed sat in the back, arms crossed, watching like a man ready to burn the place down if anyone touched her. The pastor, caught off guard, offered her the podium. If you have words, child, speak them. Emma stepped up. Her voice shook at first. My name is Emma Stanton. I was beaten in a house that sang hymns every morning. I was starved by a woman who quoted scripture between slaps. A murmur ran through the room. I came here to say that fear doesn't keep me quiet anymore. She pulled back her sleeve, revealing the thin, pale scar on her forearm. I carry what she did to me, but I carry something stronger now, too. A name I chose, a home I built, a family I found. She looked straight at Clara, seated near the front, lips thin and trembling. You can spread lies. You can burn barns, but you can't burn truth. And you don't scare me anymore. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of weight, of shifting hearts, of reckoning. Then Pastor Kenley rose. He was no rebel, just an old man with a soft voice, but his words cracked the air. We failed this girl, he said. Let's not fail the next. Others stood. A teacher who'd once seen bruises. A storekeeper who'd noticed Clara's cruelty but kept quiet. They all stepped forward, and just like that, the silence broke. Outside, the wind kicked up dust. Reed waited by the wagon, his hat low over his eyes. Emma climbed up beside him. Was it enough? She asked. Reed nodded once. You didn't just speak, you shouted. As the wheels turned toward home, Emma didn't feel smaller. She felt taller, louder, braver. She had shouted. And this time, the world had listened. Millstone's courtroom looked the same, but everything else had changed. Emma didn't walk in like a shadow this time. She walked in straight-backed, chin up, a clean braid down her back, and a steady fire in her eyes. Reed walked beside her, silent as ever, but every step he took said, You'll have to go through me first. Clara Stanton was already seated, gloves pristine, veil pinned just so. She hadn't aged a day since the last hearing, but now the mask looked cracked. The pew behind her sat nearly empty. Even Hank Cooper had shrunk somehow, suit wrinkled, eyes flicking around like a man realizing the tide had shifted. A new judge. Presided Judge Allison Harper, younger, sharper, female. She rapped her gavel once. This is a follow-up custody review. All parties present. Clara rose first, voice like syrup boiled too long. Your Honor, I made mistakes. I was strict. But I raised Emma with structure, with godly discipline. I only want to correct my missteps and bring her home. Emma didn't flinch. Not once. Cooper stood next. Reed Maddox's past is well documented. Shiloh, the brawl in Dead Dog Canyon. This man has a history of violence. Judge Harper turned to Reed. Is that true? Yes, ma'am, Reed said calmly. It's true. I was born in a house of violence and made my way with fists. Then I bought a piece of land and I stopped. I've not raised a hand in anger since, but I'd do it again to protect her. Emma stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake this time. I choose him. The judge blinked. Emma, I'm 14, old enough to know love from control, old enough to say where I belong. She pulled something from her pocket and placed it on the table. A red-stringed feather. She left this on our porch, after setting fire to our barn. That's not discipline. That's evil dressed up in hymns." Clara's face twisted. "Lies. She's poisoned against me, manipulated by this outlaw. Then why is she standing taller than you?" Someone whispered from the back. Sheriff Ames stood up, tipping his hat. "I'll testify again. And this time I brought the feather, the rope, and a witness who saw Clara near the property the night of the fire." Judge Harper held up a hand. "I've heard enough." The gavel fell. "This court rules that permanent custody remains with Reed Maddox. Clara Stanton is hereby barred from any contact with Emma Stanton and shall remain 500 feet from Maddox property for the duration of the minor's guardianship. Cooper's testimony is stricken from the record due to confirmed conflict of interest." Cooper opened his mouth, then closed it. Clara sat, stunned. For the first time in her life, no one was listening to her. Outside, the sky was overcast, but Emma swore it felt like sunlight. She exhaled hard, the last breath of years held tight inside her chest. Reed looked down at her. "You good?" She nodded. "I'm not just good, Pa. I'm free." They rode home in silence, Maisie's hooves soft against the dirt. As the cabin came into view, Emma saw Ruth and little Anna out front, hanging laundry. The wind carried laughter. Home. This time, not because someone gave it to her, but because she stood up and made it so. Emma turned 14 beneath a sky streaked with gold. Ruth baked a peach pie. Anna wove a crown of wildflowers. Reed gifted Emma a small cedar box he'd carved himself, initials burned into the lid. E.M. Inside it, nestled in soft cloth, was her mother's locket. The one Clara had claimed was lost. Emma didn't ask how he found it. She just cried for the first time in months, and Reed let her. The cabin had changed. It rang with laughter now, Anna's giggles, Ruth's humming, Emma's voice stronger every day. The barn had been rebuilt with the help of neighbors who once stood silent. Not anymore. One morning, Emma found another feather tied in red on the fence post. She didn't panic, didn't scream. She plucked it loose, snapped the twig it hung from, and tossed both into the fire without a word. Reed watched her from the porch. "You all right?" Emma nodded. "She can leave whatever she wants. Doesn't mean I have to carry it." That afternoon, she rode out past the edge of their land, where the fence met the tree line. She stood there a while, wind in her hair, hands folded over her heart. She whispered, not for safety, but for strength. For the next girl. The next child watching from behind a screen door, waiting for someone to leave a basket by the fence. She would leave more than a basket. She'd leave the whole road. Back at the cabin, Ruth called her in for supper. Anna waved. Reed held the door. Emma smiled, not because she was healed, but because she was home.